Hey everyone, it's me, Arthur Kade, welcoming Fox News personality Gretchen Carlson to Behind the Velvet Rope. Make sure to check out her new book, Getting Real, out in bookstores everywhere June 16th. Great stuff. Hey everyone, it's me, Arthur Kade, and Gretchen Carlson. I was just telling you, my mom absolutely adores you. She rarely gets excited about, I get to every day talk to movie stars. She'll be like, oh, who cares? She's like, Gretchen Carlson, oh my God, tell her I love her. So
well, where is she?
She's in Philadelphia, where I'm from, but she was just like, you have to profess my love. So you have an enormous #1 fan, and her name is Marina. I had to drop that on you before we sat down.
Thank you so much, Maureen, for being a fan. I'll be in Philly, by the way, so she can go to GretchenCarlson.com and look at my book tour, and she can come out and see me.
That was the greatest beginning of a plug I've ever seen. Congratulations. You have this new book, Getting Real. Fascinating stuff, because it's so admirable. You put it all out there, the beginnings of your career, what you dealt with as a child, insecurities, and what I love, especially during this time period, how to make it as a successful female in media. It's so great. Talk to me about, what you told me, this labor of love, what it was all about.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really wanted to write the book to be inspirational to other people, because sometimes people look at national news anchors and they think, they've never had any issues, no problems to deal with. And I share plenty of failures and mistakes that I've made along the way. But it's all to inspire other people. What I like to say is, if a fat little kid from a small town in Minnesota who happened to play a mean violin can end up going to Stanford University and become Miss America and get their own national news show, if I can do it, you can do it too.
I love that you are the first Miss America who won as a classical violinist. How crazy is that when you look back? First of all, you're still involved with the Miss America organization, and I think it's so wonderful, the work that they do. But looking back on that childhood, Minnesota, being what you call a chubby kid, what was it all like?
Well, the thing is that they really wanted me to fiddle to play at the Miss America pageant, because a classical violinist had never won. So, of course, they were coming at it honestly. A couple fiddlers had made it up into the top 10. And I said, well, actually, this has been my career as a child. This is something that I practice 4 or 5 hours a day. And so I had a lot of naysayers going into it. Plus, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm short. That's why I wear heels. Well, these are short for me, actually. Usually 5 inches or higher. And, so I didn't really fit into the stereotypes of a contestant who would do well. But that's exactly the point of my life story, which is, there is no category for height in Miss America. There is a big category for talent. And I had something I'd been doing my whole entire life. It was a real talent. And by the way, you win scholarship money for education. And I was an incredibly serious student. I did really well in high school, and I went on to Stanford University. So these were all applicable to the life that I was living. It made sense for me to try and become Miss America.
When does it dawn on you that a career in media is what you wanted to pursue?
By fluke, by happenstance. It's another interesting way in my book of how my life has gone in all these different directions that were not planned. And I think that that is true of most people's lives. So when I was at Stanford, I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. And so I went through the whole LSAT, prep, and took the test. And then being Miss America, you're in front of the camera on a daily basis. And it rekindled a small little interest I had in television, but I was on one particular show that really did it all for me, which was, you're probably too young to remember this, but it was called Bloopers and Practical Jokes with Ed McMahon.
I do remember.
And Dick Clark, and they were quite a pair, and they pulled a prank on me 1 week after I was Miss America. So I was supposed to be interviewing and talking about this new satellite system behind me, which is very technological, dubbed the Miss America. Well, I didn't know anything about it. And they said, don't worry about it. You don't need to know anything. It's a conference for 5,000 engineers in Washington, D.C., and you just have to stand there and look pretty. I was like, So the people who were on the set with me, they got called off. They had a microphone problem, and the other one had an emergency phone call. So suddenly I'm by myself on the set, and the floor director says to me, we're coming to you now in 5, 4, 3, 2. So he said, just start talking. So I did my, little Miss America speech that I'd learned over the last week, and then I stopped, and he goes, oh, no, you got to keep going. So for 15 minutes, I was talking about a satellite system that I knew nothing about, and the only thing that was going through my head was, I'm going to get fired as Miss America. So when that show finally aired 6 months later, I was so humiliated. I was like in my hotel room with the covers over my head, like, ugh. And it turns out in the way life works so unexpectedly, I got all these calls from TV agents saying, if you can do that, you can do TV. Have you ever thought about it? And that's how I got into TV.
But it wasn't all peaches and cream after that. And I love one of the stories you talk about is you're in Cleveland, you're part of this all-female anchoring duo, and then you get some bad news a week after your honeymoon. That's crazy. Tell me the story. I love it.
I know. I went from Italy to hell. I came back. We had tried this new revolutionary thing, as you said, two women together, first primetime newscast in the country to try that. And it didn't work. Okay. Well, and I was the one to go because the other woman was born and bred in Cleveland and I was the newcomer. But the way in which it was presented to me was not the best way to fire somebody. So the general manager said to me, it's not working out, and so you're going to be done. And by the way, you'll be fine now that you have a husband.
That's awesome.
Talking
about female empowerment.
Awesome or awful. So I was in my 30s. I had built my self-esteem and my self-identity in the television world, and I never remembered any man hearing, well, you'll be okay now because you have a wife. So the reverse doesn't really work. And being married in and of itself is a tough thing to transition through in the first year. So now I'm a basket case. Toughest year of my life, to be honest with you. And I was out of a job for more than a year. And in the way the world works in such small world fashion, I ended up moving to Dallas and working for the same woman that I had worked for in Cleveland. She had not technically fired me, but she ends up going to Dallas to work for NBC, and she called me up and she said, I want you to come to work for me. So I ended up moving to Dallas. Then I commuted with my marriage. So my second year of marriage was commuting. And then eventually I got a job with CBS News in New York. So it all worked out.
Then you transitioned to Fox and Friends, 8 years there. It's incredible to see what Fox has become, Fox News. The popularity. When you first started there and then leaving there after 8 years, talk to me about that journey because, you guys were on SNL. SNL was making fun of you. It's when you've made it, when you're getting SNL skits about you. But talk to me about that 8 years because you guys really built a heck of a brand there.
Yeah. And in fact, SNL is still doing spoofs on me on my new show, The Real Story.
Do you like it?
I think it's hysterical.
I would be so honored.
Well, and the lines of TV and media and entertainment have been so blurred since I started in this business. So I think maybe 25 years ago, if SNL did a skit on you, you'd be like, oh, that's awful. But now it's like...
You made it.
I guess. and I always can tell when it's happened because to be honest with you, I'm really probably not up that late at night because I have 2 little kids, so I'm not really watching it live. But in the morning, my phones are on fire, and I'm like, oh, I think I've been on SNL again. And sure enough, I'll go to the computer and I'll watch it, and I'm laughing out loud. And as it turns out, my makeup artist at Fox is also a makeup artist at SNL, and she does Vanessa Bayer's makeup, who plays me. And Vanessa will say to her, is Gretchen mad at me when I do these skits? And I say to tell her, no, I think she's fantastic. I think it's totally funny. It's hysterical. I guess in a way, you have made it when you're on SNL.
It's funny. I just talked to Vanessa Bayer 3 weeks ago, and she's like the nicest person. It's so funny when you meet them in real life and then they're able to get into the character. You can't really imagine that dichotomy. It's crazy. But
she needs to get a different dress, though, because she always wears red for me.
She needs to learn to play the violin. That would be the killer. When you look at spinning off to your own show, and one of the things I admire tremendously is you went makeup free in an episode. I think you were the first cable female news anchor to do that. Talk to me about now using the platform you have to be inspirational, to say, like you had said, you can make it from anywhere and achieve this. Talk to me about that platform.
So we decided to do that because it was the International Day of the Girl. And I didn't want to just do it as a gimmick. I wanted to do it to honor the self-esteem of our young people, which is another huge message in my book. Growing up fat, you build your identity not from the outside, you build it from your soul. So in a way, it was a blessing for me to build my self-esteem in that way. And that's the message that I wanted to impart to young people the day that I had no makeup on, because it's not about your exterior, it's about your brain. And it's about the self-confidence that you have instilled in yourself. Now, for me, that was from parents who reminded me on a daily basis. My mom used to say to me, you can be anything you want to be. And I believed her. And it also came from the immense discipline that I learned from practicing an instrument so many hours a day. You know, kids realize, even if they only play the piano for 5 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day, they put time into something, they get better at it, and they love it. You know, they love the applause or even the recognition that they're improving at something. And that's how we build our self-esteem. It has nothing to do with your exterior. And I have to tell you, I got a lot of attention for doing the no makeup, and people were like, "Oh, you're so brave," and all that. I'm thinking to myself, not really.
Like, I just didn't wear makeup.
I just didn't wear makeup. But there was a much more important message there. And to be honest with you, the real me is, let's see, I would say like 75% of my week is without makeup. In fact, when my kids see me sometimes with my makeup on, they do like a double take. And they're like,
"Where's Mommy?"
Who just came? They do. One time I came home after I started the afternoon show, and my son was always used to seeing me after Fox and Friends. I already had my makeup all off, right, when he got home from school. Well, now I come home later in the day, and he looked at me and he did a double take, and he goes, "Mama," he goes, "what happened to your face?" Because I still had on my TV makeup, and he's so used to seeing me be the real me, you know, in my garage, cleaning up on the weekends and taking the dog on the walk and going to his hockey and his soccer and his piano lessons. And so that's really who I am deep down.
It's incredible. You talk about kicking the quote-unquote dumb blonde label. And that's where you look at perception versus reality. Here you are, a brilliantly educated, brilliant woman, and people will still use quote-unquote dumb blonde. That drives me crazy. Does it blow your mind that people don't realize how accomplished you are behind the scenes?
I think even if they do realize that, what I've come to understand is when they don't want to debate you on the issues, it's just easier to call you a dumb blonde from Fox.
It's interesting.
I mean, I think, you know, and I say in the book that I reached the bimbo trifecta when I got to Fox. Because I already was a natural blonde, strike one. I had been a former Miss America, strike two. And then I came to Fox News. So, you know, bimbo trifecta. The thing is, I developed a really thick skin early on after being Miss America, because that same exact thing happened. It was almost like my resume evaporated, and people just like to use the easy out like bimbo or dumb. And that was so upsetting to me in the beginning, because coming from Minnesota, you know what they say about Minnesotans, Minnesota nice, it's really true. Everyone's actually really nice to each other, so to be treated in that way was the biggest disappointment for me after that experience. And so when I got to Fox, and then it really ramped up, already my skin was this thick. And I often like to say that once you turn 40, you're really liberated. And you really don't give a you-know-what. And so, honest to God now, I really don't care. I don't read all the detractors. If I read all that stuff, I wouldn't get up in the morning. I mean, some of it's so vile.
Cripple you.
Yeah, I mean, it's so vile. And so the reason I share it in the book, and people will be amazed at some of the things that people write about me. The reason I share it is not because I care about it, it's because I worry about our children who are facing the same kind of bullying on social media. And they don't have the maturity that I do or other people do. They haven't been through some of the same experiences, so they can't just blow it off. And kids are killing themselves over this.
It's awful.
It's awful. So, and there's a certain anonymity that people feel like they can just come after you just because. So here's my tactic. I write back to a lot of the mean tweets and to the Facebook posts that aren't so nice and to the emails. And I'll just say, "Oh, thank you so much for your thoughts about me. Have a fantastic day." And you know what happens?
Kill them with kindness.
Yeah, a lot of times they write me back and they go, "Oh, well, I didn't really mean it in that way." And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." But I did learn that lesson from my dad, and it's almost empowering to write them back in a positive way instead of, going below the belt like they've done.
So one of the things I love is when you look around, and I've had the privilege of talking to and building relationships with people like Savannah Guthrie and Katie Couric and Gayle King, and speaking to people like you, I find that it's very inspirational to see what's going on with women in media right now. But every time I talk to people, they say the same thing. There's still so much further to go. What's your thoughts? What's your opinion of what's going on in the landscape right now?
I think so, like these crow's feet right here. I mean, it happens to all of us. We get older. I do think, though, we've made fantastic strides. You look at Barbara Walters, look at Diane Sawyer. I mean, even look at Katie. She's still young, but in, 20 years ago, maybe she still wouldn't even be on the air. So I think that we've changed with that dramatically. I mean, there's still that whole idea, though, that men, they get gray hair and they get wrinkles, and that supposedly makes them smarter and gives them more authority. And then the same thing happens to women, and it's kind of the opposite. But I hope we've made great strides on it. We need to get more women running companies. I think the statistics on that are pretty dismal. Like 4.6% of all CEOs running Fortune 500 companies are women. I think only 13% of the people who work at Google are women. So in my book, I'm a huge advocate for women's rights and women's equality and women's equal pay. And my mom used to always say to me, why do you always have to talk about that? And guess what? My mom is now running a company at 74 years old.
That's awesome.
And she'll call me up and she'll be like, I know exactly what you're talking about. So, we've made great strides. I always say I work for my son more than I work for my daughter, because I want him, when he gets into the real world, to look at his fellow female colleagues and give them the same amount of respect that he had for his mama.
What a perfect place to end it. Congratulations on the new book, Gretchen, Getting Real. And it's great to see, again, you just letting it all out there and be vulnerable and say, hey, you can come from anywhere and be anything. That's awesome. Congrats.
Thank you so much.